What is everybody? Roll Tide. Welcome to the Bama Tailgate Show. And as you can see, we got our buddy Chris Lowe with us. On today's show, we're going to talk about Bama starting practice, quarterback battle. We got the SEC tournament coming, and Chris is going to be there. Bama plays on Friday, a number 2 seed. Another excellent job coaching by Nate Oats. And we're going to talk about the possibility of the government getting involved, maybe a Trump executive order to try to fix the situation right now with collectives in the NIL, maybe save college football because it's in big trouble. All that on the show today, brought to you by Pearl River Resort. You guys are ready for the tournament. You can go there, Vegas-style sportsbook at Golden Moon Casino, the Timeout Sports Lounge. They got you covered. 20 big screen TVs, full-size bar, all the games are going to be on, and then you need a little bit of help. You got the kiosk, you got the window, you got individual kiosk, everything you need for that Vegas experience, and you're not going to have to pay $1,000 for your seat. And that's what I found out last year when I went to Vegas. Everything's overpriced there. Let's go. All right, there he is, Chris Lowe from On3. He's been covering college football for a long time, one of the best in the business. Chris, saw Coach Saban. I think Urban Meyer was there. A bunch of college football executives met with the president and some of his people. And there's a chance that they may do an executive order. They're going to try to do something about NIL. What can you tell us about that whole situation?
Yeah, well, the president said he would write an executive order trying to get some of the, some type of uniformity in place. I don't know how successful that's going to be as far as passing. I think like everything else in Congress right now, it's going to be divided straight down party lines. And I don't know that there'll be enough people who will vote for it. We'll see. I don't know, Mick. I don't know about you, man. I'm sort of tired of the meetings and the roundtables. I mean, let's get the right people in there that can make the difference, and let's do something about it. I have fatigue. I just have meeting fatigue. I have legalese fatigue. I'm tired of eligibility cases going to court. There's got to be some way, somehow, that we get some clarity on what the rules are, what they aren't. Because I'm telling you what, we're starting to hear more and more. Greg Sankey referred to it again. He was on Feinbaum, I think, yesterday. And this is the second time he's hinted at this, that if they can't, that maybe they will break away. Maybe the SEC would break away, the SEC and the Big Ten. They're the two big fish in this whole deal. And the playoff can't do anything. They can't expand unless those two agree on some type of, I don't know if it's a compromise or what, but that's the second time we've heard those words, or at least some suggestion that, maybe we go do something else. Maybe we break away.
Well, could the players sue? I mean, because it feels like even if they did an executive order, they could just sue and say, hey, we should have the right to transfer as much as we want.
Right.
We should be able to get as much money as we want, because we don't have a true, and Coach Saban said this, and he's honestly right on the money. We don't have a true NIL situation. These guys aren't earning the NIL money. They're getting paid to play, right? Which we knew was coming. And then when they didn't really have like a system in place to have any kind of rules or regulations, it just turned into where, the schools that spend the most money are going to be the most successful because they have better rosters.
Well, first of all, you're right. Number one, your first question is, if there were to be some kind of executive order that were passed, how many attorneys Mick would be lining up to represent players? So I don't see that being the solution, because all that's going to do is lead to more court cases. Wait a minute, you're restricting my ability to earn money? Let's go to court. We're going to sue your butt. And I think that's 100% sort of, I think that's where you're getting to. That's exactly what would happen. I've heard some people say, well, maybe some type of tiered collective bargaining agreement based on the sport that makes the most money, i.e. football. Now, and basketball makes some money at a lot of places, but after that, nobody makes money. But I saw I think it was Alabama put out, we talked about this last week. They put out the revenue and expenses of all their sports, and certainly football made a ton of money, basketball. And after that, it was loss. I mean, the baseball, I think, lost $4 million, basketball, $4.5 million.
Well, Chris, let me just say this. For Alabama women's basketball, it's the worst business model I've ever seen. They made $748,000. They paid Kristy Curry $700,000. Like, there's no business in this country that runs like that.
Well, I think if you looked at 90% of the schools, certainly in the SEC, Big Ten, you're going to find a similar financial.
Pretty close to that, huh?
Yeah. I don't think that's
one-off.
That's an extreme. I really believe that's probably in most cases. Now, was UConn making women's hoops? I don't know. But what do they lose? But I think would not be really far out of the realm of what you find at most places. And, the other thing that Sankey has said, and I agree with him on this, is Title IX is going to protect women's sports one way or the other. The sports, I think they're in trouble, Mick, if this thing is not, I say, fixed, if there are not some changes, if this thing goes on the way it is, this system, which is a pretty shoddy system, men's tennis, men's track, men's soccer, those are the sports I think that are in trouble. I think those Olympic men's sports are the ones that will be the first ones to get cut. You look around the country. I've had that, and he's not the only one to say that. Greg Sankey. I've had ADs tell me the same thing, that's probably going to be, if we don't figure out some type of solution in college sports, you start talking about collateral damage. I think that's probably where we start, that some of those type of sports get cut. But no, I don't see any model that's going to fly that is going to eliminate or limit, probably that's a better word, limit what athletes can make. If you're a quarterback or you're a top point guard, you're going to be able to command a lot of money. And if they're going to put restrictions on what those kids can make, they're going to fight through every court system they can possibly fight through. And all that's going to do is going to bog us down. So how can we come up with a system where the athletes have representation and everybody says, well, they don't want to be employees. And, I do agree. I would have liked to have heard some athletes' voices at that round table. What do they think? And not just a football player, but what's a women's softball player think? What's a men's track and field athlete think? I would like to have heard some athletes' voices, and still would like to. What do they want? What do they think? Do they have any ideas of how we can fix this? But I do think more than ever, with the Big Ten and the SEC having so much power, that I used to sort of think it was a threat. Maybe it still is, honestly, that we might see at least some examination or them look into sort of a way they can split in and do their own thing, split out and do their own thing, take their ball, run with it, and generate revenue in that way. I don't know how far off we might be, but I've long had coaches tell me, Power 4 coaches in the SEC, out of the SEC, that at some point they think football will break away from the NCAA. And I'm probably more inclined than ever to believe that, Mick.
Well, I mean, I look at it, and look, I went to Alabama, took economics. None of this makes sense, right? Like, I could see why the players wouldn't be very happy with a system where they're generating $148 million and $20 million's being paid on salaries for them. But the coaches are getting paid a lot. The administrators are paying themselves a lot. You got a women's basketball coach getting paid $700,000 to not win anything, and basically the whole program makes $748. Like, none of this is fair to the people that are producing. Now, this is not just at Alabama. This is an industry-wide sloth, right? So them and men's basketball make money. Why would you want to be in a system where you're allowing people to get paid way more than their actual value, right? Like, your actual value isn't $700,000 if your business makes $748. It just isn't. And I'm just picking on women's basketball because, they're just the worst of the spenders at Alabama. Baseball's right there with them. And you mentioned it, all these other sports. I played college. I played lacrosse at Alabama. It was a club sport. It was actually awesome. We played Auburn and we played Ole Miss and Georgia Tech. We played all these schools. We paid for some of it. The school paid for some of it. We had the same crowd that women's basketball had. I mean, let's be honest with you. We had the same exact crowd. We had a couple hundred people that would come watch our games, sometimes more. Big games maybe get you 1,000. But we paid for it. It wasn't like a suck on the system. Nobody's showing up for lacrosse. I played, really, we compare it to football. And I just look at it and I'm like, look, if this is going to be professional sports, then we need to just make it professional sports and turn amateur sports into amateur sports, right? And you live and die off of what you eat, like Jay Barker used to say, kill, you get to eat what you kill, right? And he meant that in a sales, aspect, but I feel like the same way in these sports. I hate to say that because I love baseball. Actually, I like women's basketball too, but when you look at the financials, it just doesn't work if you take football out of it.
Yeah, well, and I think that's why we again, to hit on that topic of breaking away, which is why that's something I think some of these schools and ADs are maybe looking at, that right. You can't continue at this pace to bankroll an entire athletic department just right. based on football. Now, I'll say this. When I walk around some of these places, walk around campus at some of these places that I tour, I am blown away at the sheer number of people that are working in athletic departments now.
That's
and I really do wonder, what do all these people do? I had one former AD tell me, he says, you walk through these, there's 2 and 3 stories of offices. And he says, it's like you're walking through the IRS. There's tables everywhere.
I know.
And so when you start talking about spending and revenue and expenses, I think there's a lot of fat in athletic departments. I really do, especially now when you look at football staffs. Go. And I think this is probably strategic, Mick. If you go to a lot of schools' football websites, Alabama, Ohio State, Texas, they don't list that. You'll click on coaches and staff, and they'll list the coaches and maybe like the strength coach and his staff, but rarely do you find one where it lists everybody on that campus who's being paid by football. It's staggering.
Yeah, right.
The number of analysts, and now you've got personnel people, you've got you've got NIL people. I mean, I think you've got to put those. It's the numbers of people that are on athletic staff that are being paid, in a lot of cases paid a lot of money. I think the other thing that works against, and I'm with you, if the football is the engine that drives the train, and those are the players that people come to see play, basketball players too. Certainly Caitlin Clark in women's basketball was one of those athletes. Those are the people that should be in a position to earn the most money, because that's right. Their jerseys are being sold for.
Yeah.
I mean,
she's a great example of how NIL is supposed to work.
Well, I go back to
kicked ass and everybody liked her. They went to watch her. Like they wanted to be, they were fans of hers. Nobody gave her anything.
Yeah, I go back to AJ Brown at AJ Green at Georgia. Remember that was that big deal where he'd sold or autographed some of his jerseys, and I think he might have missed a game or two, and Georgia got in some trouble.
Yeah,
and then you go back and look how much of his jerseys. You see all his jerseys in the stands on Saturday, people wearing his jersey, and he wasn't making a dime. I mean, so we've gone from that extreme to now. But I think the other thing that has gotten the sport, certainly football, in trouble is, you mentioned women's sports not making any money, losing money. How many coaches are making $7, $8, $9, $10 million a year that have average to below average programs?
That's what I'm saying. I mean, and it's like, you're right. I mean, when I pull this up from AL.com and I look at this, football, $64 million and basketball, $9 million plus, right? And then, you're looking at the very bottom, and to think that as a financial, just as a business, that you would pay anyone $700,000, that their program's making $748. It's just no wonder you got issues. No wonder the bottom line over here is almost $5 million, right? In the negative. Like, I don't mind as much when you talk about softball, right? They lost 200 or 2 million, $2.5 million, right? But they're competing every year for championships. Like, aren't they like 21-0 right now? They've won a national championship. It doesn't bother me as much when you're in the picture constantly to win it all, right? Or at least you're in the picture. Women's basketball is not there. They had a nice run in the tournament this year. Baseball, I don't even know the last time baseball won a postseason game. They haven't really been a true contender since Mitch Gaspard was there in 2011. And they haven't really been a top-notch program since Jim Wells was the head coach. So it's been a long, long time for them. But yet we're paying their coaches and their staffs like they're winning championships. And it's like, if you're, to me, if I'm at Alabama and I'm looking at Clay Rusall, James Smith, Isaiah Horton leave, I'm saying to myself, hey, you know what? We just lost 3 really important pieces to our program because of NIL money. I would much rather have that money going towards the thing that's bringing in the money instead of those sports that aren't really they're not winning championships, and they're losing a lot more money than they're making.
Yeah, but you know what the counter argument to that is the team that just won the national title in football. They found a way to make it work.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
And they paid, and they paid good money, but they didn't come close to paying what Miami paid, what Texas paid, what Oregon paid. I think what Ole Miss or Tennessee. I'd say Alabama and Indiana were probably comparable to what they paid, and they go 15-0 and win the national title. Which again, that's the new era we are in college athletics. So the argument would be, and listen, in theory, I'm with you. The argument would be, wait a minute now. Indiana found a way to make it work. They had the same Alabama and the schools that did make a deep run. They had the same resources available to them as, say, in Indiana. And I think that is one thing that people are going to point out. Ole Miss makes the semifinals last year. No, I think Ole Miss
is spending, though.
Ole Miss, and I think that's the thing with Lane. Lane was the one that built that program, but he had a lot of help.
Mm-hmm.
They jumped in. The collective jumped in.
Right.
They spent money. They went out and they outbid schools for big-time players over the last couple of years. But they still weren't in the vicinity as Texas. Texas didn't make the playoff last year.
But you know what, though? They were there, though. They were right there.
Yeah, they were there. They were close. Ohio State obviously made it, did win a game, but they made it, and they spent tons of money. The big spenders, Texas Tech, they made it. Miami. So there's another school that you could point to and say, well, that's not a blue blood, but they've been able to spend their way. They've found a way. Now, that brings up a whole other subject. And we've seen now some people come out and say it, coaches have said it, that this whole college sports commission that's supposed to regulate or delve into whether these collective payouts are legit. Listen, I think Max Olson, who did a terrific job at ESPN of sort of looking into how these deals work over and above rev share. Rev share is quote unquote the same for everybody, 20.5. I think it goes to 21 plus this year for the entire athletic department. And usually 14 or 15 of that's used for football. But over and above that's where you get into the quote unquote, and I agree, it's pay for play. It's not NIL money. That's why teams get to $35 and $40 million rosters. Well, Max did a story on that, and I'm not an employee of ESPN again. Max is a good friend and a good writer. Go read his story. And one of the people he talks to, I think it's an AD or a GM or a coach, says, well, the rules, it's not really a rule anymore. It's a suggestion. And that's absolutely right. What you should do, what you should pay, what you can't do, because no one's being popped for it. No one's being popped. And so as long as that, it's like when you're on we use the speeding analogy all the time. If you're running a stretch road, if I'm on 59, and by the way, I have gotten a ticket before going from Hoover to Tuscaloosa. At least one.
Have you?
I won't go any further than that. But if and I'm not saying they don't patrol that stretch, but you're on a stretch of highway or interstate where they rarely patrol, and the cops aren't out there, and you can go 100 miles an hour if you want to, or 90, then you're probably going to do it. Now, if you've done it a couple times and gotten popped, you probably aren't going to go as fast. And I think that's sort of where we are right now with NIL, on the collective end of it, Mick, is it's just until someone sees somebody really get popped for tampering or for coming up with these bogus $5 and $10 million deals to pay people just to pay them, and there's no real name, image, and likeness component to it, then people are going to keep doing that. And
I agree.
And same with eligibility. You know, if kids continue to go to court, now I know the Tennessee quarterback didn't win his case. Trinidad Chambliss did. I think, in fairness, they were two different cases. They weren't apples to apples. But if kids continue to go to court and gain more eligibility, they're going to keep doing it.
Yep. Hey guys, newlifeart.com. Look at all those great pictures right there. 20% off when you use our promo code Bama Tailgate. Buzzer beater, crispy screen, buzzer beater with Mark Sears, part of last year's Bama basketball team. I love it. Only the second of the basketball prints by Daniel Moore, but a lot of great football memories. So you guys can pimp out your man cave like I have. Look at my two of my favorite games right behind me. And that's not by accident, championship games. But check it out. Use our promo code, newlifeart.com. You know about it. So let me talk a little Bama football, and then we're going to talk some basketball. Keelan Russell against Austin Mack. I know you're going to make your way around to all these different camps, but this is a really interesting football battle for quarterback at Alabama. You got a guy that came over with this coaching staff. He's been with them since Washington and Mack. Big, tall kid, 6'6". He was the backup last year. And then you got Keelan Russell, who Bama pried away from SMU. He's the top rated recruit they've ever had, right there with Bryce Young. And these guys are going head-to-head.
Yeah, and I've seen both those kids throw in practice last year. And both throw a really nice ball. And Russell really looks like, now again, we could sit around all day and you can throw 7-on-7 or on air, and you know as well as anything that doesn't translate to what a quarterback's going to look like in a ball game. But I really like the way Russell throws the football, his ability to move and throw the ball on the run. Mack is a big, tall guy, like you said, another guy. In the pocket, looks to have pretty good presence. But, neither one of those guys have really played when it counts. And that's always a dicey deal, especially now with so many schools going into seasons because they dip into the portal and they get a guy who's played 2 or 3 years and been experienced. Well, neither one of these guys really have. And Alabama would be in this boat. Tennessee would be in this boat. I'm thinking other schools in the SEC. Vandy would probably be in that boat. Of you're sort of the exception now when you go into a season without a quarterback who has real experience at the collegiate level, and that's always tough. And it's certainly tough when you're trying to figure out a way to generate a running game. I think they brought 10 offensive linemen in some shape or form. This year, they've got one starter coming back, the Carroll kid, who I think is going to be a really good player, by the way. But they've got to completely revamp their offensive line. And so many times when we talk about a quarterback competition, we probably don't talk enough about who's around them. Who's going to sort of be their guys, not only catching the football, but being able to protect them. And can you run the football? You look at Ty Simpson's touchdown to interception rate last year. It's remarkable that it was as good as it was.
Yeah.
When they could not run the ball at all. And he got sacked a ton. I think Alabama was about 90th in the country.
Yeah.
In sack percentage. And so it was his first year starting. So I want to be clear on this. It's not like he'd started 25 games in his career, but he'd been around. He played some. So when you throw a guy in that hasn't started at all and hasn't been around some, and you're rebuilding your offensive line, that oftentimes is a pretty scary combination.
Yep, I agree. So you got to replace 4 offensive linemen. They did get some talent back. I'm excited about Ty Haywood, but you got a bunch of guys that you're going to put in there, whether you had them sitting on the bench last year, you brought them in as freshmen or transfer portal, but they got to figure it out. You need your tight ends to block. You need your running backs to block. And I wonder, how talented Bama's running back room is. I know everybody's hoping that EJ Crowell is going to be the type of player that maybe he can potentially be from day one. AK Deer, get him on the field. Can he block? Daniel Hill last year was someone, Kevin Riley, but it starts up front. I mean, it just does. And then and you put all that back on the quarterback. Now, I almost wonder if you just go ahead and say, hey, you know what? Russell's our guy. We're going to take some lumps this year and let these guys grow into a team together. If that's the case, Bama's not going to make the playoff, and it's not going to be a fun season because they're going to lose games because of that. Or do you go with Austin Mack, and then is Russell transferring at the end of the year?
Yeah, well, I'll start there. If Mack is the guy and plays most of the year, I have a hard time seeing Russell being back in 27, just because not because of anything Alabama did or didn't do. It's just that's just sort of the world we live in right now. Quarterbacks, they're not going to sit around for 2 years and not play. They're just not a kid who was as highly recruited as he was. And maybe it's the same way with Mack. If Russell gets, it's going to be hard to keep. And again, at every stop, it's hard to keep two guys that are talented, which both of them are, and are making good money, which both of them are. It's just not going to happen anymore. And we'll see how that shape plays out. I do think, though, Mick, that it's going to be so important on how Bama plays around him. You mentioned Crowell. I've heard some really good things about him. I do think that's a position, if the kid has made the right stuff, has been coached well,
right,
comes in shape, and I think all those things are true about him. Running backs, first year on campus, and we've seen this a lot over the years, do have a chance to make a pretty immediate impact. And they just need somebody that, can turn, 2 and 3 yard runs into 7, 8, 9, 10 yards run, who can be explosive. And I thought Jam Miller, for the most part, was that kind of guy. I don't know that he ever, and I'm not making excuses for him, I don't know that he ever completely got over that injury that kept him out. When he was out the first, 3, 4 games, he just never seemed to have that same burst that he did. Did he put up some good numbers at the combine?
Yeah, he had some really good numbers at the combine. I think he's going to be a great pro.
Right. So it wasn't like it wasn't like Miller didn't have the talent or the ability to be a big time back. It never clicked. And so much of that, again, is up front. I talked to someone very close to that program who coached there in that program for years, not Nick Saban. And they told me that their biggest disappointment about that team last year was the way they played up front in the offensive line. And it wasn't like they didn't have talent or guys that could play, that they just didn't play well. They didn't play well together. They weren't consistent. They weren't able to really get any kind of push when they needed to. I thought their best performance all year long in the offensive line was their win at Georgia, which is no coincidence. That was their biggest win of the year, and their offensive line played the best. I think it goes hand in hand. And they did. I don't know if they ever played to that level, at least consistently throughout a game, as they did in that game, especially during crunch time. They're late in the game when they needed to put the game away. That's always people say, well, what do you look for in an offensive line? Well, can you run the ball and keep the ball and keep the lead when you have a lead, especially in tough environments? And they did that. And I don't know that they ever played quite to that level, which is the challenge now for Coach Clem as he comes in. They've got two guys, and granted Owens is the tight ends coach, but both Richard Owens and Adrian Clem have both been in their careers run game coordinators.
Right.
So they've headed up run games at some point. Of course, Adrian was in the NFL for several years. So that's not by accident that Kalen goes out and brings in two guys like that. So what the priority is this spring, and certainly as we get into the preseason, and that's running the football.
AveD guys, Mick Nation, hit our QR code right there. We're going to be following the NCAA tournament. We want you to do that with us. We're going to have our own bracket challenge right here. So do that, and we'll give money away. Bama's the number 2 seed in the SEC tournament. We're going to talk about that in a second. And also, I got to throw a shout out to my guy, J.K. Terrell. Made this Steely for me out of glass. This thing's so cool, man. And I love all the stuff that he does, but check him out for yourself. 205-929-6759. And that's Brown Shed Glass Studio. But he does Bama logos and and really all kind of different stuff. But that steel is fantastic. It's real heavy glass. He said this is vintage stuff that was from the 60s and 70s, and then he does it. And you hang it on your window, and it looks fantastic. And he says it's going to last generations and generations. But you're looking for that gift for someone that they're going to remember, something that they might not buy for themselves, but it look really cool and they'll like. Do that. I mean, every time I walk in the kitchen, I see the Bama one that he made, and it's just fantastic. So appreciate him for being part of our audience here, and and making that for me. Bama basketball, number 2 seed. Nate Oats, another killer job as Bama head coach. Got Bama in position to be a dangerous team in the tournament. I think when they were struggling at the beginning of the year, I remember some people were like, maybe we need to look at different coaches. And I'm like, whoa, stop a second. Shut up. We got the guy. And they go on a run. I think they win like 9 out of 10 to end the regular season. They beat up on Auburn. He's done it again, number 2 seed, and they're going to play Friday at 6:00 Central.
Yeah. The way first of all, they're a fun team to watch play. If you like to go watch entertaining, and I guess everyone's different, Mick. What's entertainment to you may be different to me, but the way they play and the way they run, the way they shoot the three, their guard play, we've talked about that a lot, they're just a fun team to watch play. I don't care if you like basketball, let's take away what lens you're watching the game from, no matter what team is your team in the SEC. Bama is one of those teams. Let's say they go to, I don't know, Buffalo or San Diego or Greenville, South Carolina. If I'm a hoops fan in those areas and I see Bama's in that regional, then I'm going to go watch them play. That's the thing. The first thing that sticks out to me is it's a fun product. It's a good product. It's a fun product. And again, watching those guys get their shots, the way they can out front, the way they shoot the three. I understand at times they're not as good on defense, and Nate has said that himself a couple of times over the last few years. At some point we got to stop people, but also part of that's just the system they play. They're going to play games in the 80s and the 90s because of their style of play. But I think they got a shot. I worry a little bit about their inside play. Do they have enough fouls inside to give if they do make a run into the Sweet 16, into the Final 8, and they get into a game, let's say with a Big Ten team that's big inside, that got the bodies to throw at them. That was what happened. The first game against Tennessee, they just got worn down inside because Tennessee had all those bigs. I think if they come up against another team like that, especially one of those Big Ten teams who has big guys, do they have enough fouls to get in? Now, I think they can. The difference is they have the guard play in the perimeter to get out and go and maybe tire out some of those teams. But, boy, they have really played their best basketball when you need to play it, and that's going into the postseason.
Yeah, no doubt. I think Nate Oats is going to be a sought-after coach in the offseason for basketball.
Well, he has the last 2 years, right?
Golly, man, the guy's so good. Look, I've been a Bama fan. I went to college at Alabama, do this channel. This isn't just work for me. It's a passion. But I realize that what we have with this guy is as good as we're going to have when it comes to basketball coach. Enjoy it, Alabama fans, but somebody eventually is going to come along and this guy's going to go somewhere. I think he's going to go to a basketball power that pays him a bunch of money. I don't know how we can stop that from happening because all he does is win.
Well, the first thing you better do, and I'm not saying Bama's not doing this. They're not doing it as much as some in the league. Is you better resource him to the point where he can continue to build rosters.
That's right.
Because much like football, every coach, and this was the big discussion, when Lane went with Ole Miss from Ole Miss to LSU, because it certainly wasn't like Ole Miss wasn't giving him a ton of money. But every coach now wants to be somewhere. Facilities are nice. Yeah, you want tradition. You want to go to a place. You mentioned a basketball school. Kansas is the world, and Duke's and Carolinas and Kentucky's basketball means and will always mean something to those places. But I think right there at the top of the list for Coach Mick is, what are you going to do resource-wise to give me a chance to build the kind of roster it's going to take to year in and year out make deep runs in the NCAA?
Right.
And not just Nate Oats in Alabama. I think that's every coach. And you're right. Schools have and they will continue to come out. I think there's not just these three. Okay, but I think of 3 younger. I don't. How old is Nate? You know how old Nate is?
Oh, let's look it up. Let's just guess. I'm just gonna guess 57, but
Is he in his 50s? Okay,
I don't know. I'm guessing that. Let me look it up.
But there are 3 coaches. Let's do it this way.
Oh, he's 51.
Okay, there are 3 coaches who've come into the league
way younger than I said.
from
Sorry,
mid-major type programs. Certainly Nate from Buffalo, Todd Golden from San Francisco, and then I think the guy at Vanderbilt, Mark Byington, has done a terrific job there.
Mm-hmm.
You look at what he found and what the program was, inherited to where they are this year. So there's an example in basketball, man. You can go out and find those guys. I remember tell you a funny story. I was in Indianapolis a few years ago with some friends who were up there at that regional. Now, in this little pub right down the street from Gainbridge Arena, and I look across and I see wearing a ball cap, Scott Strickland, the Florida AD, and he's got his lieutenants with him. And I'm kidding him. And I'm like, because that's right when Mike White, I think, left Florida to go to Georgia. So they needed a new basketball coach. And I'm like, I'm sure you're here looking for a coach. And it was a regional, so there's 8 teams there. Well, he was there obviously looking at Todd Golden because San Francisco was in that regional. And I remember, I don't know, a week later when they hired him, thinking to myself, I don't know much about this guy. But it's an example. If you do your homework and you go out and you find guys that are sort of up and coming, guys who've done it at places that aren't as resourced, but they run good stuff. They know their stuff as far as the game. You can go out and find guys like that at the Buffaloes of the world, the San Franciscos of the world.
Yeah.
You don't always have to go and pry somebody away, from another Power 4 program. And I agree. I think Oats is what he's done there at Bama, the way he's elevated the program at a place, let's be honest, winning in basketball at Alabama when football is so dominant, it would be very – and Ohio State's had some good runs. It's been a while. But it would be very comparable to going to Ohio State and year in and year out being a Final 8, Final 4 type of team. When Greg Oden was there, they were that type of program. But that's been 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah. Well, the arena isn't great. I mean, they were talking about building a new one. I guess they're not going to now. And you have a lot of difficulty, when it comes to tradition. But now this guy's gotten to the point where he's recruiting against the best of the best, and he's winning. He's found a way to find players that match his system that he can afford. And I could see him going somewhere like Lane. You mentioned Lane Kiffin. When LSU's really good this year in football, it's because the governor of the state's out helping raise money for the NIL, guys. Like, this is why I'm looking at women's basketball. Going, how are we wasting $5 million? Let's figure out a way to get that money in football, because the difference between having the difference between $10 or $15 million, it sounds like a lot of money, but it's not. And when you're making 148, but that's the difference between having depth and not having depth. And that's why I think that's one of the reasons that Lane Kiffin left. Not only the talent in Louisiana and not having to compete. I don't even think they really had to compete against Mississippi State when he was there for talent, but I think that it's the amount of NIL money, the tradition and the NIL money that he's going to have to get the players that he wants. And look, they were the number 1 transfer portal school.
You know what's going to happen? You've cursed yourself. Alabama's women's basketball team's going to the national title this year.
I hope they
realize
do.
That, don't you?
Hey, look, and if they do, I'll never talk bad about them again. It would be. Well, let me tell you something. When I was in school, I remember Bama basketball, women's basketball got to the Final Four, and it being a really crazy win over Duke. I think they lost to Duke and beat North Carolina. It's been a while now, but they were great. They used to compete with Tennessee. They could never beat Tennessee with Pat Summitt, but they were always really competitive. And then something happened, and it's, that was in the 90s. They've been really bad to okay, but it's not the women's basketball and the players that I'm picking on. It's the business, right? Like Greg Byrne wants to ask all of us to pay more money. Hey, we need more money. We need people to do this. Get in the collective, blah, 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 blah. And then we see that they're making that much money and they're wasting it. It's like, it's hard to go to to the fans and ask, and the boosters to ask for more money when you're wasting it. I think if you felt like they were more financially responsible, and I don't care what every other school's doing. I'm just looking at what we do, because that's what I care about. And it's like, hey, you know what? Maybe instead of paying $700,000, you're paying $100,000. The coach of basketball team seems like a pretty good paycheck when you talk about the people that are watching this show today. There's a lot of people that would love to have $100,000 for their job. And if your business makes $700,000 and you make $100,000, it's a lot more realistic than your business makes $700,000, you pay yourself $700,000, and then you're allowed to just go waste millions of dollars. That's the rub to me. It's the, don't come ask me for money when you can't even handle the money that you're getting right now. And there's a lot of money. I put it back on the screen again, just so you can look at it. But I mean, there's a ton of money in this, and we're short right now of what we need to have, Chris, in my opinion, to be at that elite level that our fan base is expecting. And it's a lot on Coach. It's on a lot on Coach DeBoer, when he's supposed to be over here like a magician, making up, pulling rabbits out of his hat. And you're competing against schools that are spending, some of them, I would say, would you say maybe double the money on NIL than Bama? Is that a fair assessment? Like, so maybe if we're paying what we're paying and they're paying 20 million more, 30 million more, I mean, that puts them in a spot where there's superiority, because they're able to have the depth that it takes to get through these, sometimes 15, 16 game seasons.
Yeah. Well, and I will say this, couple things. Georgia probably is paying pretty comparable to what Alabama is in football. Georgia's not paying what Texas and Miami and Oregon, and they found a way to make it work. And again, I mentioned Indiana. So there are other examples of schools that aren't paying aren't paying what Ohio State is paid, Miami's paid, and Oregon's paid, and Texas Tech is paid, that are still winning at a pretty high level. Georgia would probably be the best example. And then Indiana, certainly this past year. We'll see if that continues. Was that a one-off? That to me is one of the more fascinating stories in college football, is can they continue to play, Mick, at that level and win at that level? And is there anybody else out there like that that can do that? I don't know. I'll say this about college sports. Whoever said that people in college sports made good business decisions? I mean, when you're paying coaches $60 and $70 million not to coach, $50 million, you had what LSU pays Kelly, what, $48 million?
Yeah, that's crazy too, right? Think about
Jimbo
that.
got $77 million.
Yeah.
Auburn has paid its last.
They got like 5 guys they're paying.
Yeah. What is Auburn up to their last 3 coaches? I think they're up to close to $60 million.
Yeah, that makes it tough, doesn't it?
You talk about bad business.
Yeah.
That's bad business. And
terrible.
I think that's when people hear from the different angles about what needs to happen, what doesn't need to happen, what players should and shouldn't make, women's basketball, baseball. They always point, the critics on the other side, no matter what side you're on, will point to that and say, wait a minute, you're paying your coach what? Just not to coach?
Mm-hmm.
So who's making bad? Alabama, as an example, Alabama is paying DeBoer, what, $10.5 million? They had to pay 12 just to get him.
Yeah. We
forget that. Just to get him away from Washington, they had to pay him 12. So there's a lot of money being spent. And you're right. Everybody, every booster, every donor wants a return. If I'm going to give a couple million to the collective, and I think those are the real GMs now. Because people say, who are the GMs? Well, the GMs are the people that are willing to pony up $5 and $10 million to go out and get players. Those are the people that, and I've even had some of them say to me, we feel like we're in a GM role. Now, is that healthy for the sport? I don't know. Probably not. But there's just a lot of money involved in coaches too. You get a ton of coaches that are making, I guess, what, half the SEC now is over $10 million as head coach. And, I hear you and I get it, but there's going to be a lot of people point to stuff like that, money being wasted, where you're paying guys not to coach. And in some cases, guys
Right.
you
Well, I'm not
hire.
disagreeing with that either,
Yeah.
being bad business.
No,
We don't have that situation, thank God. I mean, but if DeBoer has the type of year that Bama could have this season, could be one of those programs. I think Greg Burns, the guy that should be probably the guy worried most about a bad year in football, and then it would be DeBoer after that. But you know what? DeBoer's done a great job of figuring out how to get things done. And you talk about Kirby, Kirby gets a discount because he's Kirby, because he's won championships, because he's the heir apparent to Nick Saban, right?
Nick did too.
Kurt
I think Nick did
Signetti's
too.
amazing. I don't even know. We want Kurt Signetti. I've heard from a lot of our fans. I think everybody does, right?
Yeah, Signetti's sort of is sort of the football version of remember when Mark Few they really started kicking everybody's butt in basketball, and everybody wanted Mark Few in basketball.
Yeah, right. You're talking about
and I go
Gonzaga.
back even to Bama. Bama tried in basketball. Bama tried to hire. How many years ago was it? Was it when is it when they hired Oats? They tried to hire Greg Marshall. That was before that though, right?
I think it was before that. I think it was when they got Avery Johnson. Yeah,
and we're willing to pay a lot of money. And he turned him down. And Wichita State ended up, and of course, he ended up getting in hot water at Wichita State, and they pushed him out. But I remember I actually know Greg and knew him during that whole deal, and Bama was willing to pay during that time a lot of money to get him. And he talked to Nick Saban, and I think Bama thought they were going to get him.
Yeah,
and he decided to stay at Wichita State. And but so, yeah, I think if you ask. I don't want to speak for Nate, but if you ask Nate right now, Nate, would you rather have a new arena or spend a ton of money to upgrade the arena, or would you like to have another $5 million to spend on your roster next year? I guarantee you what his answer would be.
Yeah, I think that's already been answered from what I've heard. And you bring up a great point. But that's how things are different now, Chris, because it used to be where you got an advantage was go out and get the best coach. This is what Mal Moore did. He went out and got the best possible coach you could get in Nicholas Lou Saban, and he went and upgraded the facilities better than everybody else.
Right
now, it's like Jake Coker saying, "Hey, I was in the NFL and the facilities suck." Yeah, because they're paying the players. They weren't paying the players before. Maybe they were under the table, but it wasn't that much. Not like
the SEC. Nobody ever paid players under the table.
I think everybody got paid, but nothing like what's going on now.
Not millions of dollars, but
right.
Anybody who says players weren't getting paid under the table got their head in the sand back in the
but it was in the thousands. I mean, it wasn't in the millions, and it's just such a different world now, and you talk about Title IX, and I don't want to see Olympic sports go away. I don't want to see women's basketball and other sports go away, but it's just a different deal. It's just a different animal because you have to compensate the people that are producing. And I know that's tough for us to think about because it's not amateur athletics, but unless they can figure out how to make it amateur athletics again, I don't know how they do that.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. I heard the president said we need to go back to the way. That's like saying that the two of us are going to go out tomorrow, and you might be able to. I can't. And we're going to go out tomorrow. We're going to run a sub 5-minute mile. I used to run a sub 6-minute mile. I never ran a sub 5-minute mile.
I'm running.
But that ain't going to happen. We're not going back to the way it used to be.
I'm running into Barley's
5K
on Sunday. Mine are like 10 minutes. 3 10-minute miles.
So how do we take what's going on now and try to sort of structure it to a model where it works for everybody? And I think that's the tricky part.
I think, what I think is this is like with some of this stuff, like, the other sports are going to have to be more financially responsible. They're going to have to go out and raise money, and some of that money goes back to football. And but at the same time, I mean, you don't want to see them go away, right? I mean, it would suck even I've never watched one Bama tennis game. I've never watched a golf match. I've watched a lot of basketball, both men's and women's, and baseball. Love baseball. Passion of mine is baseball. I mean, I spent my life around the game. But at the same time, like, I understand that in this state, if Bama football is like it was when I was in college, we stunk. Everything else goes downhill with it. And it is an anchor, right? So, and then when Saban came in and we started winning, which I don't think we'll have that kind of success anymore. But even if we just have the success that we've had the last couple of years, where we're pushing for a playoff or one of the top teams in the SEC, I don't see a collapse happening. But man, I'll tell you what, if it turns into like what the deal that Tennessee just went through before Heupel got there, before Randy Boyd became the president, before they really got things turned around. Businesses don't do well. The economy doesn't do well. Like it's not just winning on Saturday. And that's why I'm so concerned.
Well, I'll say this. The pressure to win in the SEC right now at football, it's always been immense, as you know, is greater than I think any of us could have ever imagined because of just what you said. The money that's been generated, the money that they're having to pay players now, the money that coaches are making. See, I wonder if there's an adjustment on the coaching market in football, especially the guarantees.
Yep.
Especially the guarantees. Now, it's got to start somewhere. I don't know who's the first one to jump out there and say, no, we're not going to guarantee you 5 years.
Right.
Fully guaranteed. But the pressure, because of the money, the TV money at stake, because of the money that schools, every AD, every single AD right now, and we joke around about the talent. Tennessee's got a talent fee they put on tickets now. We joke around about how much everything costs. If you go to a basketball game and you order one of these big beers, they're like $20. Someone said they went. I didn't go. Someone said they went to a Tennessee. They have these lounges now. Most of the schools do that have renovated arenas where you can go in and you can buy booze. Someone said they bought a shot of bourbon and it cost them $20. And I like bourbon, but I don't know I like it quite that much, Mick. But the money that's being that schools have to generate now to pay the caliber of player that it's going to take to win national titles is staggering. And I mentioned the coach salaries, the buyouts, facilities, and Tennessee just spent a ton of money on their baseball stadium. I don't know that they'll ever be able to recoup that because baseball is not a money-making sport.
Mm-hmm.
And you look around the country, LSU a few years ago, read it out, obviously Alec Bach. And there's some really nice. I don't know how many of the baseball stadiums have you seen in the SEC? There's some really nice.
Most of them. Yeah, I've seen most of them, Texas and Oklahoma. But when I broadcast baseball, I saw a ton of them. I mean, the thing about like Tennessee won the national championship a couple years ago. They had 4 guys drafted in the first round of last year's draft. Their coach was in my mind a Nick Saban type of transformational
he was a rock
guy,
star.
and Tony Vitello. Now he's the manager of the San Francisco Giants, right? I'm curious to see what Tennessee's baseball program does moving forward, but they just made a tremendous hire there. But the difference between Alabama and Tennessee, I mean, you can get into this, is that they have one of the best businessmen, and I'm throw it out there. I work for him. I know him. Randy Boyd is the president of the university. Everything that they do it's a business mindset. That's why I'm sitting over here like the canary in the coal mine yelling at us as Alabama fans, because I don't want to see us fall behind. But you're right. You start talking about, and this is why you got a smile on your face. You know exactly what I'm saying. This guy is a genius when it comes to doing the things that you're going to have to do to set yourself up for down the road, right? Like turning the football stadium into a business district is a brilliant idea. Putting a tax on your tickets for NIL, it's a great idea. And I know that we don't want to pay the extra money, but they're going to put it on there. You're going to pay it anyway, right? I mean, look at the ticket value going up. I mean, the talent is what's going to separate you from the competition. And that's what Nick Saban was great at, taking that talent and teaching it how to win. But get the talent's what's going to get you there. I just want to see Alabama do the same stuff, man.
Yeah, I like to see the numbers.
Do the same thing.
I'm sorry, I didn't over.
No, go ahead.
I'd like to see the numbers on some of these. Florida just built a new baseball stadium a few years ago. South Carolina's is relatively new. Tennessee just built one. They spent a lot of money on Bama's baseball stadium in the last 5 years? Is that
Yeah, it
right?
was like 10
Was it-
because I know I broadcasted the first game in the stadium, and it's been a while
So I
since I've
guess
been to
I'd love
a
to
game.
see what was spent on some of these stadiums, and have they been able to recoup it? Will they
You
be
know,
able to
that
recoup it?
Bama was before the NIL era really started.
Mhm.
Tennessee was, hey, look, they're competing. There were so many people trying to get into those Tennessee games when
Yeah, you couldn't
Tennessee
get
was
in.
making a run.
Yeah.
You couldn't get in. Like there were people outside watching the games, like thousands. So it made sense. Like you're basically trying to uh, meet the demand, right?
Right.
Of the players, of the of the community, of the fan base, which is what I said about going all the way back to like when we had the list of the money up there. I'm looking at Bama softball and I'm like, hey man, they're constantly going to Oklahoma City and playing for
Mhm.
World Series. Like they're 21-0 right now or something. You know what I mean? Like people that their games sell out. People want to be there. You know, that's different too, because maybe they're not generating the income, but they're generating the interest and they're winning, they're competing for championships. And that to me is not quite as good as business, but you know what? People care. And I think that matters too.
Yeah, I've seen some crowds at SEC basketball men's games this year. People will go up to the corner. You've probably seen some of this online. They go up to the corner of the arena and they'll shoot down maybe 2 minutes after the game has started. I understand some people arrive maybe 5, 6 minutes into the game, but they'll shoot down. I saw one of these at Mississippi State this year, one of them at South Carolina, one of them at LSU. There could not have been 2,000 people in the
Right.
stands.
Yep.
And so there's some schools that are, resourced pretty well there, paying their coach decent amount. So it's not just, and I wonder how much a school like, South Carolina had a horrible year, LSU had a horrible year.
Yeah.
The apathy, and I think that's the thing in the two resource sports, football certainly, and
Yeah.
men's basketball. When you start having apathy set in, that's almost worse than just about anything. But
It
I
is.
love to go around. The reason I mentioned baseball, and I really think baseball in the SEC, we'll see if it's the case this year, may be the most competitive, most balanced sport, even over and above football. Because when you look at all the different teams that won championships, how many teams make the tournament, and the interest. Because I've been to games in Baton Rouge, I've been to games in Gainesville and Columbia, South Carolina, Starkville. There's not a better place to watch college baseball than Starkville, Mississippi. That
That's
place
true.
is phenomenal.
Love it.
Um, Even at Ole Miss, you go to Ole Miss Stadium for a game on a Saturday night is
Oh,
terrific.
great
Um,
fans. Arkansas,
Arkansas,
just
Baum
into
Stadium
it.
is great. Yeah, it's
LSU fans, diehards. South Carolina, great fan base. Yeah, I don't want to see that go away, man. I really don't.
yeah,
We
me
just got to figure out a way to make it more financially responsible for our school, or maybe get to the point where we're, competing with those teams to win championships. Hey, I want to tell you guys this. Did I ever ask you, Chris, your what's the best card you ever had? Sports card. Number one.
Yeah, I had did we talk about this last week? I had a
We might have
70
asked you a card question, but I want to know about the best one, like the best one that
yeah,
you ever held in your
I had a
hands. It doesn't even have to
75
be yours.
yeah, 75 Hank Aaron card.
Okay. Yeah. You told me
The
that
year
last
the
week.
year he hit 715, and I
Yeah, that'd
still
be
have it
cool.
somewhere. I have to dig it up and find it, and I have no idea what it would be worth, but I remember when we got it. So you're talking about a card that's 51 years old?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Um, Now
There
my
was
dad, I don't wanna,
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
my dad had those old, and he gave my middle son, he had those old tobacco cards,
Yes, I was about to say that.
going way, way back. You're talking
Yeah.
about what, the 40s, maybe 50s, even before? And I gotta go back and look through some of those. But yeah, those were, now I think some of those, if you got the right player, would be worth a ton of money.
Oh yeah. I held the Evers, Tinker, and Chance, all three. They were the Cubs infield when they won the World Series back to back, 1907, 1908. And they were those tobacco cards.
Yeah.
They weren't mine, but I held them. And the reason I'm telling you guys that is the Rat Pack cards. They are part of what we do here. Boyd Sports is one of only, like, I think 8 whatnot companies that do cards that are allowed to repack, buy, sell, and they do it on whatnot. And they do auctions every night. It's really fantastic, So some of these newer cards are limited, 1 of 1, 1 of 10, and they're worth a ton of money. So, you might pull a card worth $3,000 these days. It's a lot different than us when we got the bubblegum cards. I remember if your card was worth $5, the tops and Dunruss days. But Chris, always great to see you.
I can get them for $1. Yeah,
you can get
four
right
for $1.
Four
packs
for $1.
Of cards for $1. That was the days, man.
Yeah, no, I remember that too. But check it out, whatnot, and it's the Rat Pack cards, and we're brought to you by Pearl River Resort, Silver Star, where you got a bunch of great concerts going on. Dancing Rabbit Golf Course, which is the Augusta you can play, and the Timeout Sports Lounge, which is the spot right now with basketball tournament time here. Chris, we'll do it again next week. Good to see you, brother. And roll tide, everybody. Thank you.
So, Jake, let's break down some game tape.
Hold on, fellas. Steve.
Hey, Jake. You ready to rock?
Let's roll, brother.
Guess we're calling plays at Pearl River Resort. Wow, Jake's first throw scores. And Steve's got the crowd pumped. Man, they're absolutely rolling.
'Cause I don't have to be me till Monday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I ain't gonna face reality.
I tell you, Jake's still got game. While Steve keeps rocking aces. Boom, Jake seals it with a pick.
Come call your own plays
At Pearl River Resort. Let's roll.
I don't have to be me till Monday.